start with. We're interviewing one of the HCI candidates at the moment. Most of you know that, Erin Carroll. Tomorrow morning, 11 o'clock, is a Meet the Professor session in 103. Please, as many of you as can make it, really important you see these candidates and give me your feedback, what you think of them. Obviously it's your professor, so please go along to that. And she's given a talk in the afternoon, there's posters all over, I've emailed things out to you, so, you know, please try and turn up to those tomorrow. What we're going to start with today, we're going on to a slightly different new topic today, a different topic. But before we go on, this is from last week. Some of you know I use this in my classes, I've used it in other classes. It's an article from Scientific America, and it's by one of the journalists who is a computer scientist. And it's a very interesting story. He wrote this, it's a very embarrassing story for him to write. The story is called From Russia with Love, and it's how I got fooled and somewhat humiliated by a computer. So this guy was on an online dating service. I was looking for a date, like most men. I made my initial judgment based largely, like most men, I made my initial judgment based largely on a photo. Yes, that's shallow, but when one is online, it's also fairly stupid, because photos are easy to fake. So he saw a slim, attractive brunette, supposedly living in California. She's of Russian heritage, her English wasn't too good. So he wrote to her. She responded to my email quite affectionately, admitted that she lived in Russia, not California. Normally I find that kind of distance daunting, but her photos were very attractive and her emails were warm. So I continued to correspond with her. She sent me her real name, I'll call her Ivana. So here's an example of an email she sent in her broken English. I have talked to my close friends about you and to my parents, and them happy that I really interested someone, and regardless of the fact that not here in Russia, and all from them happy for me that I have met you. I have very special feelings about you. It in the same way as the beautiful flower blossoming in my soul. It's Valentine's Day, come on. I only cannot explain, but I'm confident that you will understand me, so I wish to know that makes you think, and I shall wait your answer, holding my fingers half crossed. After 2 months of emails, he says, I started to get, well, not suspicious, but concerned. Online dating is a slow, frustrating process. And he wrote an article on that. Our romance was progressing slowly, no phone calls, and vague talk on Ivana's part. So, I also noticed that Ivana's letters seemed a bit redundant and, let's say, narrow in scope. She wrote over and over about her interactions with her mother and friends, but she never brought up a million other things. She didn't talk about politics, movies, books, fashion. More importantly, when I made very specific observations that would have been of interest to her, for example, a comment about Russian President Vladimir Putin's latest crackdown, she seemed to ignore me. That should have tipped me off, he says. So finally in January, in a January email, Ivana mentioned all the nice things she was saying about me to her friend when they went on a walk in a park. So I had a look. Do people go for a walk in this park, a large city 200 miles from Moscow in the dead of winter? The weather on the internet said it was 12 degrees Fahrenheit and snowing heavily when she went on this walk. So I asked her, and she ignored this. So I went through her subsequent emails very carefully. All the signs were there. It was only marginally responsive to my correspondence. I sent her questions that demanded replies to specific. She never responded. At that point, I sent her the ultimate test I wrote. Gibberish, yeah? Ivana reacted with another letter about her mother. Aha! I've been interacting for 4 months with a computer program. Specifically, a chatterbot, like the ones I showed you last week, a program designed to converse with people over the internet. This is a computer science professor who writes for Scientific American. I'd been fooled, partly because I wasn't thinking clearly. I wanted to believe that a beautiful young woman cared about me. But let's face it, this was also darn clever. Programming. The most successful conversational computer programs do fool people by thinking they are humans. They set the expectations low, in this case by pretending to be someone where English isn't a first language. So then he goes on about all the things we've been looking at. He talks about Jabberwocky, he talks about Eliza being the first one, Alice, and Captain Kirk was a variant of the Alice algorithm, or Alice system, so, and that they really work on pattern matching. He talks about the technology. But it's a fairly accurate thing. So he says, like all good scientists, I'm trying hard to turn these lemons into lemonade. So he's now writing books about it, about his experiences, and writing papers about how he was fooled. And he's in the process of cataloguing rating the humanness of more than 80 online chatterboxes. So he's going through these artificial systems that talk to you in this kind of Turing test manner, and seeing and assessing them. I love this term, humanness. I'm sure Patrick will have a lot to say about that. But meanwhile, somewhere in Europe or Russia, a very smug, anonymous computer programmer has got Ivana chatting with hopeful men all over the world, tabulating her success and probably tweaking her to be more human-like every day. Isn't that a fantastic story? Happy Valentine's Day. So, we have this idea of a...
Are you saying that, or you just programmed this?
Yeah, just programmed. By Hallmark. I do think it's a great story. Do you want to do a few comments on that before we start on the main topic today?
I don't have anything specific to say. It's a wonderful variation on the Turing test, which I think we talked about last time. And you preface.
And it's also a variation on what Dennett said, that the humans themselves have all these little foibles and reasons for doing things and for having the conversation, and we don't analyse that. We look at this blank thing that if the computer talks, but this guy obviously wanted this young lady to be in love, this virtual young lady to be in love with him, so he lowered his expectations, he was prepared to overlook things, and it was easier to fool him because of that. So the human aspect we often overlook in this, that as humans we vary a lot and we have different purposes and reasons for doing things that we don't consider. The Turing test seems to assume that every human is the same, and if we fool that human, then it works. And that's an inherent deficiency of the test.
One idea that I may at some point develop more than the hunch that I have is that we might use the notion of mirroring. When we look into a mirror, we see a lot of what we're hoping or expecting to see, or fearing to see. And it seems to me that in some ways these chatterbots are mirrors that talk. There's a kind of mirroring that's going on syntactically. We saw that with Eliza. So we might, a lot of students in literary studies often concentrate on something that Lacan called the mirror stage. And we might be able to extend that critique, which is about the sensation of, it involves a little bit of hearing, but mostly it involves seeing. And the construction of the ego and the ego, what Freudians call the ego and the ego ideal.
What do you mean by mirroring?
You're looking at something out there, right? It seems like it's other, but in fact it's here too. So that identity, a sense of identity or a sense is constituted in a relation. It involves things like projection, expectation, desire.
which
Things
would,
like that.
that's a perfect mechanism when we start to look at virtual avatars and projection, or Facebook profiles, projecting ourselves into other virtual worlds.
And doesn't Lisa talk a lot? She's worked a
Lisa
lot.
does a
with
lot on
social
that.
network.
The Australian academic who we're bringing in works a lot on that kind of stuff. How we create ourselves in virtual worlds. But yeah.
So I haven't fully formulated the issue for myself. So I'll be working on that as we go.
It's interesting.
Isn't that kind of important for like building rapport and like making someone, like don't you feel more comfortable talking to someone when you're using the same vocabulary? You know what I mean? Whether it's your friends or like once you establish the vocabulary with someone, you instantly feel more comfortable with them. You know what I mean? As far as like having conversation and stuff. When someone's using completely different vocabulary that you're not used to, you're like, oh, what are they?
Yeah, I'm married to an American. Welcome to my marriage.
I agree.
That's all marriage though. Is that communication?
Well, with the from Russia with love, like even though it's grammatically incorrect and all that, it just shows that love is like a universal trait of humanism. So like even if like if the other American, I want to say Western person, worried about religion and politics, but love is no matter you can describe it poetically or incorrectly.
I like the way here it describes love as lowering expectation. What a way to think of it, you know.
And like AI and scientists, like they feel love, they can scientifically explain love, but personal desire, like that's a human.
Well, Brian, maybe I should put this up on the site. Brian posted an article on the HCI page about the very first lecture you talked about the kind of chemical measurement of love in some ways and the way scientists are doing that. Analysis of that, which is very interesting. So I may post that up as a side reading. It's only a little article, short article, so very interesting. Okay, well, what we're going to do today, I unfortunately have to leave at 7 o'clock because I have to take this interview candidate out for dinner. But we're going to talk about Searle's Chinese room experiment and Minsky's argument against it. And Patrick's then going to lead a discussion on that. Most of you will, I know a number of you know this thought experiment, but you've probably never seen it described like Ken Campbell describes it. So and Ken